This is Adam Rose, Vice President and Senior Loan Officer of Western Ohio Mortgage here in Sydney, Ohio. And this is another episode of the Mortgage Guy podcast. And this is the one where you get to know a little bit about applying for your loan. So this is kind of step one of our Homebuyer Education series that we're going to be releasing. And so I kind of wanted to dive into it because, we get a lot of questions, concerns from realtors or some clients or even buyers that are first timers that don't know where to start, right? They're concerned about what we're going to think. They're worried about that they're not going to have the answers for whatever questions that we're asking them. And I kind of want to put that to bed a little bit. So I really want to go through the first step, and that is applying, right? So with us at Western Ohio Mortgage, there's a lot of opportunity or options, to make that initial application occur. So we usually do them face-to-face. We can do them over the phone. You can do it online. It's really whatever you're comfortable with, right? We want the buyer. We want you guys to be at ease, whatever you're comfortable with the most. Obviously, face-to-face is more comforting for us because, you can get your point across a little bit easier. It's a little bit more relaxing. Some people just want to stay online, right? So we have every option available. But what I want to do is I want to go through the URLA. So the URLA is the Uniform Residential Loan Application. It is ridiculously long. It has a lot of questions that some are completely irrelevant, some not so much. So let's talk about it. So this is for the realtor partners also. So when you send a client, you can also advise them, hey, what to expect here. So let's just start at the top. The most basic information and why we're going through this is not only for what a buyer can expect to hear or what questions they're going to be asked, but it's also to make everybody understand why we ask for certain things, right? Because there's certain things that pop up on the loan application that we have to dive into a little bit deeper. And sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? Common sense, I always say this to clients and people that we know in the industry that common sense rarely prevails in our industry. But there is a reason behind it. It may not make sense up front, but there is a reason. So that's what I want to talk about today. So on the application, obviously the first thing we're going to do, the top three items are name, social, date of birth, right? Name, social, date of birth. The reason, obviously, everybody knows why that's important. But, we ask, hey, what's your name? Can you spell it out for me? It's John. Okay, well, John, is it Jonathan? How do we spell Jonathan? Is it J-O-H? Is it J-O-N? How's it read on your driver's license? We want to add in the middle initial. We want to make sure there's no suffix or anything like that because it can create some issues on the credit report, right? And how you take title. So we want to make sure it's clear. Don't shorten your name at all. It's very important we have your legal name. On the social and date of birth, so the important piece here, again, is related to credit, okay? So we pull in that credit report, and let's say we mess up, right? We might typo a number, or we get a little dyslexic, and we misplace one of the numbers or put them backwards or whatever. The reason this is important and why we have to double-check this is it's going to pull all this data in from your credit report, right? So once your file kind of goes through processing and underwriter catches that the social might be off a little bit, well, we have to ensure that your social matches on the credit report and the rest of your documents. It could indicate to us that we have to repull credit. And when we're in the middle of this process, that's the last thing we want to do, right? Because, things pop up. Medical collection pops up, late payment pops up, new debt, whatever it is. We want to avoid the situation. So we want to make sure that data is clear, is accurate, all the way up front. When we start this process. And the next piece of the URLA is residential history. Okay, so we always collect 2 years, so be prepared for that. Now, even if you live with mom and dad in between apartments for 2 months, please do tell us, right? It's important. The reason is it's going to show about the last 10 years on your credit report where you lived. All right, so and a lot of times it's inaccurate, right? It shows that you lived up to that point last month. And it might be just because you had an old bill reporting to there that never got satisfied or something happened. And it's just the way it goes. And we have to explain that, okay? But on the residential history, the reason this is important for underwriting decisions is it can really change the aspect of a file. Okay, so let's just say you call me, we collect your information, and you rent at 123 Main Street, and you've been there for 2 years, okay? So one of the questions I'm going to ask, hey, do you rent? Do you live with family? What's that situation look like? Let's say you rent. My next question automatically is, are you renting from family, or are you renting from an individual landlord, okay? So let's go down First Avenue. I don't want to spend too much time on each avenue. We can expand upon this later. But so let's say you're renting from family. Well, the problem is I can't use a verification of rent to verify your rent or your housing history because it's family. They're going to tell us what we want to hear. So the only way we can use that rental history to help strengthen your file is by canceled checks or actually documenting that payment, right? So if you're paying cash, it is extremely hard to document, right? Because we had to document that you're withdrawing that cash every month consistently and you're making those payments. It's very tough. If you have canceled checks, fantastic, easy peasy. So it's very possible it can change the complexion of a file if you're renting from family. We may not be able to document that you are, in fact, renting from them or paying rent. So that comes out. So when you don't have that housing history, it may kick you into something called housing shock immediately, right? We're going from no house payment to a large house payment. So that can have an impact on your file. So that's why we ask these questions. Now, let's say you're renting from an individual landlord. So the next question is, all right, how much are we paying, right? Are utilities included? What's the situation there? How's your relationship with that landlord, right? And why this is important is we like to do just verbal verifications of rent through a third party, through the credit bureau, and they contact them. Well, the relationship's important, right? Because if you guys are on the rocks, they may not give a good one. They may say, oh, yeah, he was 30 days late all the time. So when you get a 30-day late reporting on a rent, that's the same. We look at it as the same as if you had a mortgage and you had 30-day late payments. So that's a no-go, right? So that's where canceled checks come into play. People use Venmo. We can document that. So that's why this information is important, okay? So we can show that you have housing history. So when you're buying a home, you're kind of doing a lateral transfer. You're not going from 0 to 1,200, right? You might be going from 800 to 1,200. It does make a difference. So that's why we ask some of these questions. So moving on here, and again, there's a lot more we can go into with that. Job history, right? That's the next big one. Marital status, of course, which we're going to talk about. But job history, right? So everybody's always concerned about how long they've been at their job. I have to be there for 2 years. You don't. We want a continuous 2-year job history, yes, with no major gaps. And when we say major gaps, if you're expanding upon 3 weeks a month, then we would consider that a gap, right? What's going on there? But you can have 3 or 4 jobs. And not that I'm advising you, hey, anybody that has a dozen jobs, come apply for a mortgage. We're going to be getting this right through, no problem. That's not the case. But we want to show you there's income stability, right? You never kind of left a place and left yourself hanging for a time period where there's some question marks in your income and what's going to happen with your finances. We like to see that if you had multiple jobs, did you move up in pay or position or long-term benefits were just better? Does it make sense that you made that move? That's why we kind of ask some of those questions, and then we're going to jump right into the pay. Are you paid hourly? Are you salary? What's going on? Are you working a full 40 hours a week? Because income calculations play a role, right? We all say, perfect example, okay? Honda, right? We all know Honda. We all know the suppliers in this area that supply Honda. Well, the last couple of years, they've run into some problems with some supply chain issues, things of that nature. And so sometimes they're off on Fridays. And so if I have a newer employee of Honda, let's say 6 months, 12 months, something like that, they may only be averaging 35 hours a week or 34 hours a week, right? So having this conversation with us on what's going on at your employer is very important, because we could hop into these pay stubs and say, well, yeah, based off the information you gave us on 40 hours a week, you can qualify for X. We get your pay stubs, finally say, oh, pump the brakes, right? This year-to-date income is just off for some reason. Can you tell us what happened? And we find out, right? And it can have an impact on what you're qualifying for. So that's why we're asking and kind of diving into these questions and some of the problems there. So let's dump into the next part of the URLA. So the marital status piece, okay? Why is this important? Well, in Ohio is something called a dower state, right? So let's say I'm talking to the ladies out there, okay? So let's say you are buying a home and you're married. Your husband's not on the loan for whatever reason, job time, credit issues, whatever. That your spouse has to be at closing. They have to sign certain documents. But there's also some other things to it. So certain products like USDA, they have household income limitations to how much money you can make in order to qualify for those programs. Again, something we'll dive into deeper on another session. But that's why we are asking those questions and why it's relevant. How many children and dependents do you have? Well, each program, not each, but USDA has something to go with that, right? We can do some deductions on the income based off how many kids you have. If you have, a household of 5, you can make more money using USDA. VA, it goes into the residual income piece on how many children you have. So that's why we ask these questions. I know it sounds very invasive, but it is actually relevant. And then let's hop into assets real fast. So bank statements is what I mean by assets. 401k, anything that you are using for the transaction of this property. Cash, no. Okay. So I think that's pretty clear for most people. I think everybody gets that. That's a common read online. But what are we looking for exactly? So when we ask for bank statements, and let's just go with the baseline, right? Sometimes you can get away with less, but we always just say, hey, bring us 2 months bank statements, all of your accounts, right? Checking, savings, whatever. Kids' accounts, if you're attached to it. We want to see full bank statements. We get that comment all the time. I think Chase is a common one, Fifth Third's a common one. They always have like that 5th or 6th page that says intentionally left blank. Well, you still need to bring it, all right? Since all banks are different, they just have to document that there's nothing that's pertinent on that last page just to make sure, right? Like an odd deposit coming flying in or some debt that you're paying on that last page that's not populating. So that's why we need that. We want official bank statements. Snapshots don't work, or screenshots, right, on your phone. No go. Transaction histories, can't do it, right? It looks like an Excel spreadsheet. We need to be able to see your name. We need to be able to see the bank's name. We need to see the account number. We need to see the transactions and the running totals. So heads up there. If you are preparing to buy, get those ready to go. You can email them all the time. You can upload. We have software where you can go obtain them for you if it's a problem. We can do all of that. But the other thing we're looking for in those assets is, if you're putting a down payment down or not, whatever, we're using it for reserves. We're really searching for odd deposits, okay, which you'll hear me talk a lot about with USDA financing once we dive into that. Odd deposits can create some issues because you can't document cash, right? You can say, hey, I saved this money over the last 2 years. Well, how do I know that? We don't know. Due to anti-money laundering laws, we gotta document everything for the most part, right? So be prepared for that. Keep those bank statements cleaned up. If you do transfers back and forth from one account to another, we're going to want to document those accounts. Where's it going to? Where's it coming from? Are they yours? Is it a spouse? Is it friends? What is it? So that's what's important on the asset piece. And then the last page of that URLA, without going into too much detail on demographic information to help out the federal government on who we're lending money to, is the declarations piece. So on the declarations, please help us out here, right? Because this can catch you off guard a little bit. Do you have any the first question is are you going to live there, right? Is this going to be your primary residence? Yes or no? On the next piece is, have you had any ownership interest in the last 3 years on the property? Okay. So again, why that is important is it could pop up. You might have a home that you inherited from a family member, or an old home that you had as investment property, something like that. Well, that could disqualify you from certain loan programs, right? So USDA specifically, you can't have ownership interest in 2 homes at the same time. So that's why we're asking those questions. Have you had any bankruptcies last 7 years? What kind of bankruptcy, right? So these are questions we're going to ask before we pull the credit, so we have an idea. We don't want to pull your credit, spend money, have those cost to you and us, and waste your time, right? So if we have some of that information up front, it's very, very helpful. Do you have any foreclosures in the last 7 years? What's going on there? Because again, that can disqualify you from certain loan programs. Are you a co-signer on another mortgage? What's going on there? So there's a lot of things that goes into this, but I wanted to touch on it because this application is pretty long, right? And a lot of people are fearful of what we're going to ask, or embarrassed, right? Because they're concerned about credit. They're concerned that they're just not going to have the answers, what we're looking for. So we just want to make sure. That's why I wanted to come on here and tell you it's not scary, right? Give us a call. We can help you out. Again, we can do it over the phone. You can do it online. We can do it face-to-face. It's really whatever you prefer, okay? There's a lot more to go with this. in the Homebuyer Education series that we're going to really dive into. We're going to dive into every topic much more thoroughly, and we'll have guests. It's just me today, as you can tell. My cohort, Justin, has left for San Diego officially. So he's going to be editing from San Diego, but he probably won't be a guest with us anymore. I'll probably have Teresa on here a little bit more, and we'll be diving into the Homebuyer Education series. Again, if you guys have questions, you know how to get a hold of us. All my information is on our YouTube channel, and we'd be glad to kind of guide you through this very ridiculously difficult process. I say that because it's just a lot of information and data. We do everything we can to make sure it's smooth for the client and make people feel at ease. All right, guys, that's it for us this week. Again, catch us next week. We're going to continue our Homebuyer Education series, and we're going to have some more guests. So we're going to be inserting these videos every so often. Remember to like the videos, share it with your friends, and subscribe on YouTube, and check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we will see you guys next week.